Welcome to Sector Report. I'm David Beatson. On this edition, the New Zealand Super Fund thinks farming looks good. So where's its money going? Can a new Kiwi formula beat an old dairy industry problem and write a new chapter in the battle against mastitis? And is the 2012 harvest going to deliver gold for the country's grape growers?
There's 12 million litres of wine in here at the moment, and you need about 15,000 tonne to get that.
Well, grape growers have got their fingers crossed after this year's harvest. They'd like to shake off the hangover of a 4-year run that's seen the grape supply well in excess of wine market demand. And it looks like the pendulum might be swinging their way. The tonnage harvested is reported to be 18% down on last year, and the moderate autumn weather could see 2012 turning into a fine vintage year for New Zealand winemakers. Rural correspondent Drew Chappell's been down south, seeing if the glass is half empty or half full.
Pigs, chooks, and classical music. It's not your average vineyard. But then again, Peter Yealands isn't your average vintner.
I believe that there's scientific proof that plants like music, and if you Google that you can read plenty of examples. So I'm going to this spring try it in the vineyard to see whether or not we can get some sort of response from the vines. Now, you know, it's perhaps a long shot, but it's fun, it's different, and I know the sheep all congregate around here. You come here and the sheep are all laying down everywhere, and it certainly, to me, it gives me a good feeling.
Indeed, you have to be a bit special to have survived the last 4 years in the Marlborough wine industry, and if you've done as Peter has and thrived during that time, it's even more remarkable.
We started in 08. We opened this winery here on the 8th of the 8th of 08, the Chinese lucky numbers, and there may be something in that because we've been very, very fortunate over that time. But hell, it has been a headwind. With the recession and the big crop, you know, the industry took a real hard hit.
With more than 1,000 hectares of vines across 5 kilometres here in the Awatere Valley, Yealands Estate is not just comfortably the largest vineyard in Marlborough, but also the biggest in both Australia and New Zealand. There's enough wire on the property to go around the world. It's amazing to think that all of this is only 4 years old, the brainchild of a truly determined Kiwi battler.
Being a new player to the game, with no real history, no real lineage, it was very, very tough. There was plenty of knockers. I was seen as a bit of a oddball and maverick by some, but anyway, we were there, we were fully committed. But I was very, very fortunate that I was able to get a good team of people, and we went out there and we've grown this business very, very well.
So well, in fact, the winery's single block Sauvignon Blanc just took out the world's biggest prize, the London Wine Challenge Trophy. An amazing feat ordinarily, but even more so considering the Marlborough region has just been through its worst patch ever. The New Zealand dollar, the global recession, and a glut of product combining to devastate bottom lines.
A lot of the smaller players have suffered with contract prices falling in half, vineyard values, equity disappearing out the door. There's been quite a few receiverships. There's been a lot of cooperation in the banks to try and hold the industry together.
The low point for Marlborough came in 2010, when an already oversupplied market was inundated by even greater yields, resulting in huge drops in product shelf price and orchard values.
We suddenly had a lot of wine on our hands, and vineyard values fell to bits. Wine prices dropped to about 30% of what they were in 07. So it was tough.
That year was also a watershed for the wine industry's support businesses, chiefly the nurseries supplying bud and rootstock to expanding businesses. When vineyards stopped growing, people stopped ordering new stock.
We're grape growers ourselves, so we've felt the heat pretty intensely with our own vineyards, and they've been losing money hand over fist. So yeah, it's tough.
The number of nurseries in the country dropped almost overnight, from more than 30 to just 4.
We never got another order, in effect, for probably 2 or 3 years of any substance. It was just so dramatic. And I guess we were primed to really produce a lot of vines. And, we were about 1.5 million vines in 2008. Next year we were down by 95%.
Only those with a good plan B, like Ben Wickham at Ormond Nurseries, survived.
We've seen the good times and the bad times. We were just lucky, I suppose, with our timing. We've had some pretty good years and we're able to, I guess, be a bit more cautious about putting some money away for that really rainy day, and it certainly has rained.
Supplying places like Ormond with business are the select few vineyards that do things differently, those that kept growing despite the market conditions. Spend an hour or so on Peter Yealands' property and you start to understand why it has avoided the same traps that caught others out.
So they're in here sampling some of the wine, devising blends, I presume.
So this is sort of like the control room.
This is
Brains Trust. Yeah. The front row.
Yeah, that's why they keep me out of it. We were very lucky that the product was actually strong enough to come through the so-called glut, if you like.
Yeah.
Very much become a commodity, but the Marlborough brand of Sauvignon Blanc has held its head high right through this. And we're still the most drunk white wine in Australia. It's still the highest priced white wine in the UK. So we've got a good product. There's 12 million litres of wine in here at the moment.
Yeah.
And you need about 15,000 tonne to get that. Yeah, so.
Even after achieving so much, it's clear to see Peter is still aiming higher.
We use less than 25% of the power that is used to make 1 litre of wine based on an industry average. So, when we first started after a year of production, we were less than half, but we've now fine-tuned it down to less than a quarter. Our power bill is very, very minor. We were actually judged second most sustainable winery in the world by Drinks Business, which is an international competition, one of the most acclaimed. So to come runner-up, because my aim is to win it. I'm going to win it next year.
Thinking outside the square has saved this business from the same fate as many others. From the weed-eating cooney pigs in the vineyard to the 20 small wetland areas around the property and the recycling of vines to heat water.
When we first started, we came in thinking we were pretty clever and we used LPG, but this is the next step. So this is, energy produced on the vineyard from what is a waste. So we use about 5% of our prunings. That saves us about $300,000 or $400,000 a year in energy, buying energy.
And a sense of optimism about the future is palpable.
Fortunately, there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel now. We're seeing what we thought was never going to happen, and that's some price rises. And I think that the industry's got a very, very good future going forward.
Drew Chappell reporting. Next, what's got the New Zealand Super Fund interested in pushing more of its investment into agriculture? Stay with Sector Report. The New Zealand Super Fund is one of the biggest Kiwi-based investors we're ever likely to see. It's handling a retirement savings nest egg worth more than $18 billion, and it started making a big investment push into agriculture to keep it growing. Over the last 2 years, the Super Fund has invested $100 million to purchase its first string of New Zealand farms, and it's continuing to look for rural opportunities offshore. The General Manager of Investments at the New Zealand Super Fund, Matt Winneray, is here to tell us more. Matt, thanks for coming in. Well, the fund's been at this for a couple of years now, I think.
Yes.
What prompted you to develop a specific rural investment strategy in the first place?
Well, we like the rural sector because it's a good diversifier for us. It behaves differently from the rest of our portfolio.
In what sense?
Well, it doesn't. The value of farms and the returns that we get from farms don't move in the same way as global markets. So when global markets collapse, you don't necessarily see the same behaviour with those returns. So we like that. We like that it's a good diversifier, and it's something we can't get through listed markets. So hence the rural strategy.
So you're not dependent so much year on year income. You look at this over the longer term.
Yes.
Obviously, I mean,
Yes.
I wish farmers could say the same thing that you just said.
Sure. Look, well, we're a very long horizon investor. We invest over a very 20, 30 year type horizon. So we're able to see through the peaks and the troughs. We're able to ride that volatility, and we don't have any leverage on our farms. So we're comfortable holding through those cycles. And so that's, I think, an important part of our rural strategy.
Okay. This is a global strategy in point of fact. It's not simply confined to New Zealand.
Yes.
Are you setting out, however, to strike a balance between your investments within New Zealand and your investments offshore?
Yes, so the strategy is for up to 3% of our fund, and that's roughly $500 million at the moment. That'll increase over time. And what we said when we wrote the strategy was we could do up to half of that in New Zealand, but it is a global strategy, you're right. And so we'll look hard at where we can get that other type of exposure offshore.
Okay, but you're not actually setting a fixed quota for New Zealand. You're simply saying if it stacks up, it stacks up.
Absolutely. It depends. It'll depend entirely on where the opportunities come from.
So what sort of qualifying criteria have you actually set for the program? You've told me, right, you're in it for the long haul.
Yes.
You've told me what sort of scale you're at, but
Yes.
I mean, what are you particularly looking for?
Well, we look for, because this is a diversifier, we look for those types of sectors that provide that diversification. So we're interested in what the risk profile is, what the variability of those returns are over time, what the key return drivers are. One of the things we like about the rural sector is it allows us to play some of those really long-term themes, and one of those is the growing middle class, in particular in emerging markets, and the demand for protein, and that allows us as a long horizon investor to play into that theme, and that's what we're looking for.
Well, obviously you're looking at prospects right around the world. Is there much variation, in fact, between the agriculture in the market countries that you're looking at?
There's a lot, and so to date we've only invested in dairy farms in New Zealand. We think that has been an attractive opportunity over the last year and a half, 2 years since we've had the strategy going. We've looked a lot at other sectors and we haven't been able to find the same opportunity at the moment. So there is quite a bit of variability, quite a difference in pricing, in return expectations in those different markets.
Where else are you looking, maybe at agriculture?
We've had a look in Australia, we've looked in South America, in the US as well. We've had a little bit of a look in Europe and Eastern Europe. There's been some activity there, but the bigger areas are those first three I mentioned.
Are you concentrating on specific sectors of agriculture, or are you really looking at investment across the board?
Really across the board. We haven't got any preconceived idea of how this portfolio of rural investments should look, other than we want to have appropriate geographic diversification and some sector diversification. But really it's going to be driven by where the opportunities are, where can we see the best returns adjusted for risk.
You've got about 100 million placed in New Zealand so
Yes.
far, as I understand it. What kind of returns are you getting on that investment?
Well, it's pretty early days. We're
Only a couple of years.
Well, even a year and a half. We're look, these things are meeting our expectations. We're very comfortable with how they're going, but one sip doesn't make a summer, and we're in this for the long term. So we'll stick with that.
Of course, one of the investment opportunities that the agriculture sector is talking about a great deal at the moment is the Fonterra Shareholders Fund. Have you formed a view about that yet?
Well, we're obviously a shareholder in Fonterra already, so we've got some of this exposure in any event. We'll just take a look at that when it comes. We are active in the New Zealand equities market. We've got 5% of our fund is invested in New Zealand equities, so we'll certainly take a look at that. It'll depend a lot on where the pricing comes out and how that fund evolves, but that's something we'll take a look at.
Yes, there's still a bit to go, isn't there, in terms of passage of legislation and final formulation of the actual proposal, as I understand it.
Yes.
So, yeah. I mean, are you looking at other vehicles for joint investment with Fonterra?
There's nothing specific at the moment. We've spoken to Fonterra in the past, and indeed, because of requirement of our legislation, we need partners. So we can't control any entity. So when we're looking to make corporate investments, we need to have partners. So we're happy to talk to people, but we want to talk to people who've got the same type of objectives as us. The same alignment we need that alignment of interests, of horizons, of investment expectations.
I mean, you reactive to proposals put to you, or proactive in terms of you go out and scout the territory that you want to look at?
The latter. We certainly want to go out and scout the territory.
No, just as a final question, I mean, you've got a range of investments, a whole swathe of investment options to look at and play with. Where do you place agriculture within that broad sweep of investment opportunities you have?
We certainly think it's very attractive. It's one of the more attractive of those opportunities that we have because of that diversification quality I talked about. But ultimately, it's all dependent on
and almost counter-cyclical character.
Yeah, a little. That's right, and that's part of that diversification. So when equity markets are moving like this, it's perhaps moving in a different way. But it all depends ultimately on the price of the whatever it is that you're looking at, and that's
with the world in a bit of a volatile state at the moment. It sounds like agriculture might be quite important.
Yeah, it is, and it's very volatile. We've just seen corn prices in the US going through the roof, so we'll see what effect that has on the world. But it does provide for us that nice stream of returns that is unrelated, largely unrelated to the performance of the rest of our portfolio.
Matt Winteray, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thanks, David.
Matt Winteray, the General Manager of Investments for the New Zealand Super Fund. And coming up, what does it take to produce a new Kiwi formula to cut the high cost of an old dairy industry problem? Mastitis, it's the curse of the dairy industry, the udder infection that costs dairy farmers and the country more than $280 million a year in lost milk production and bills to pay for prevention and treatment. Dairy New Zealand's stepping up its efforts this year to curb mastitis, and so is the locally owned dairy hygiene product manufacturer Deosan. DNZ's launched Smart Sam, a new online service that puts the latest developments in the campaign against the disease at its users' fingertips. And Deosan is launching T-Tex, a new udder spray formulation that's produced promising results in a large-scale field trial that's just been completed. Deosan's Managing Director, Kip Bodle, joins us now. Well, thanks for joining us, Kip. I know that most of the teat sprays that are used here are iodine-based. What tipped you off to this substance, which actually you find mostly in toothpaste? It's called chlorhexidine, and that might be a better bet.
Well, chlorhexidine's been around for a while, obviously, but it's used widely in the human medicine market, and a lot for hand scrubs and, as you say, and mouthwashes and bits and pieces like that. It's been around as an active ingredient in teat spray, but probably what we like about the product is it's got a low acidic level.
Well, you sort of stumbled across it though, didn't you? On your brother's farm.
Yes, that's right. So my brother was a staunch advocate of the original T-Tex product, and from that point we did a lot more analysis on it and understood how teat sprays worked and just advanced it from there.
So what are the basic advantages that the chlorhexidine has over iodine?
There's probably three. The first one, which is really important, is its pH. So a cow's skin has a sort of a neutral pH, and traditionally the iodine teat sprays have a low pH level, which is acidic, which can cause skin damage.
That can be an irritant on the skin?
Not necessarily an irritant, but it can cause dryness. The difference between iodine and chlorhexidine is that chlorhexidine is more neutral, so less harmful.
Is there a cost difference?
There has been previously. Iodine's been cheaper, but more recently the commodity price of iodine's actually risen quite dramatically, so they're quite comparable in terms of pricing now.
We mentioned that your brother was an advocate of the original product, but you actually decided to modify it. So why did you modify it, and what did you do?
Okay, well, we'd been hearing a lot of evidence from our customers that T-Tex was outperformed other products, so we spent a lot of time deconstructing the original one to understand the formulation better, and so the modifications came out of that process. And the key things that we've identified is stability in different water types so that it stays in solution, and secondly its speed to penetrate.
Okay, and I mean, does it have advantages also in terms of it actually staying on the udder? Because that's a bit of a problem, isn't it?
It does, but probably the most important thing is that it's penetrating into the skin quickly before the cow even leaves the shed, because of course cows get milked, they get sprayed, and then they go back out onto pasture, which might, and mud and stuff, where bugs can come from. So,
well, you've taken the main ingredient, chlorhexidine, but you've combined it with a skin emollient, using what's been called a secret ingredient as a binder. Why is it secret?
The secret part in teat spray formulations is probably around what we call the surfactant formulation. And
Sorry, the what?
Surfactant.
Surfactant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are the little ingredients, but are very important to the total formulation. And whilst those ingredients are common and are known, it's about how they're mixed together and the volumes and how the total formulation comes together.
So it's not entirely secret, because I wondered about that. I mean, I wondered whether you would actually have to declare what all the ingredients are within a spray when you're introducing it.
Generally, the key active ingredients, so the level of chlorhexidine and the level of emollient, not so much around the surfactants.
Now, the really important thing is what does it do, and what kind of performance are you getting? Now, you've done some trials, some quite extensive pre-market trials. What has shown up there? What kind of results are you getting?
Well, I suppose if we went back to the original product, which was in the market last year, we had a situation with a corporate farming operation in the South Island, which switched from a traditional iodine to the original TTX.
They had a pretty big herd, didn't they?
Yeah, a big herd, over 10,000 cows.
10,000?
Yeah. And, to cut to the chase, basically the results showed that they reduced the cost of mastitis by about $200,000 for the season. The new product, we've done a lot of laboratory testing and probably tested it across 1,500 cows. And in those situations, we've seen even better results than what the original product was showing.
Now, mastitis is a devil of a thing because it can come in a number of forms. Is this a general protection, or is it specific to certain forms of mastitis?
It's a general protection, and I suppose we advocate that prevention is better than cure. And the beauty about this product is it creates the best teat condition, which is ultimately the best preventative to mastitis.
I mean, what do you do about getting the proof that a farmer needs to say, okay, I'll give it a go?
Well, I suppose it depends on how far you want to go. So the first thing is there's generally a pre-screening process you have to go through to verify in a laboratory that it kills bugs. And then there's options available to do further research trials on live herds.
So are you getting your results independently monitored so that you've got that body of evidence accumulating over time?
Yeah, that's right. We've done it extensively within the laboratory situation, and as we speak we are working on further research and development, which is moving more into moisture content on cows' teats. So it's a continual process.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You've mentioned, okay, you got the results from the trials, and it looks like you get some very significant cost advantages and you're getting the protection. But do you see a big opportunity for bringing this product not just simply to the New Zealand market, but perhaps with worldwide application? I mean,
I think so. I suppose where we sit as a business at the moment is there's a great opportunity in New Zealand. We see this product developing more and more into large-scale New Zealand dairying operations. So we are continuing to grow that market and modify the product to suit New Zealand systems. The international opportunity would probably be chasing that farming system in terms of large numbers, grass-based operations using auto teat spraying.
Okay, I mean, many markets offshore for that. I mean, New Zealand's got quite a unique dairy farming structure.
Yep.
How many other places could you sell it?
I mean, there's multiple, but it depends on the type of model we want to pursue in those different countries and which distribution opportunity suits us best.
Well, we'll monitor progress with interest. Thanks very much for joining
Thank
us.
you. Thanks.
Kip Bodle, Managing Director of local dairy hygiene product manufacturer Diosan. And that's all from Sector Report for now. Remember, you can check out our programs anytime online at country99tv.co.nz. Thanks for your company. I'm David Beatson for Sector Report. See you next time.